Congratulations on the film. It's had such a fantastic response at Berlin, obviously at Sundance as well. I get the sense that it's really touched a nerve with audiences, and I wondered why you thought that was. What's so special about the film?
Well, I think that, the best thing I can hope for when you're making something is that, like, if I am, I'm doing my best to be truthful or be honest or authentic to what it's like to be a person, hopefully because you're showing it to people who are also humans like you, they're able to connect to it deeply. And then they're going to also have a kind of an openness in their lives and in their heart and their moment in their life that they're going to let it get under their skin and let it be a part of their experience in life. And I think that that is something that you just always hope for. But of course, it's always a leap of faith because it's, you never know if they're going to actually let it on their skin or let it into their lives. And I think that every time that I learn that someone, it's become a part of their lives in a meaningful way for those hour and 45 minutes, I think that it just moves me so much, makes me so happy.
You can't ask for more than that.
No,
really,
you can't.
What else
As
a filmmaker?
Exactly, that's all it is. I feel like I can't imagine wanting anything else. That's just exactly the thing that you hope for when you're, in secret in a room working on the movie. Of course, your crew and cast know what you're making, but it's really a secret until it's out in the world.
So where did the story come from originally? I get the sense that it might be a personal project for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it came from a really personal moment where I found myself sitting in this bar in East Village, sitting between my childhood sweetheart and my husband, and I was translating between these two guys who don't speak the same language, and they're also from very different cultures, and they have a very different relationship to me. And I think that it was just such a lovely and friendly conversation, but there's something about it where I felt like something special was happening between the three of us, and I felt like a bit of a portal or a bridge, and I think that through that, I thought for a moment, maybe this is something that I wanted to work on, maybe this is a story I wanted to tell. But then, of course, you're not sure, again, if it is worth telling or if it is something that people are interested in too.
Yeah. You talked about your relationships, different relationships with the two men there. And I felt that the film showed that although we'd actually kind of like to put our relationships into neat little boxes, sort of family, friend, partner, doesn't kind of work out that way.
Yeah.
And that actually the film looks at the spaces in between, which can actually be quite painful and difficult. I wondered why you thought we actually like to categorise or try to categorise our relationships in that way, and whether actually, as we see in the film with Skype, whether social media and online communication actually sort of feeds into that desire as well.
Completely. I think that part of it is that it is really painful to live in those in-between spaces, right? Especially in your relationship to people. So Hae Sung and Nora in the film, the two main characters, who they are to each other is ineffable. There's no one word to really describe it.
Yeah.
They only hold hands as children. Does that make them exes? Right? They don't really speak to each other very much in the interim of them connecting. They're not really friends either. But you can't really say that they're acquaintances or strangers because they're
much more than that. They've got so much history.
Exactly, and they have such a deep connection that you can't explain if you're just to say that, oh, no, they're just strangers and acquaintances. It spans decades and continents, how deep their connection is. And you're like, well, over what? Why? How? But I think that there is and it's part of the reason why I wanted to introduce the word inyeon to the film, right? Because that word is sort of meant to speak for all of it. And then the way that it also changes over time. It really is about the kind of the ineffable connection that sort of tethers us, to each other. And I think that really was why I wanted to introduce the concept. And of course, at one point in the film, Hae Sung and Arthur, Nora's husband, they also talk about inyeon and how they're inyeon to each other because who they are to each other is also ineffable because they're not friends.
No.
They're basically strangers, but there's still a deeper connection there because they both care for this one woman together. And you can very easily say they barely know each other, they're strangers, and dismiss it, right? Which would be a little bit easier. But I think that it is more difficult, but it's more true to really talk about them as like, no, they are special connection. And there's this word in Korean called inyeon, and I think that's maybe what they are to each other. They're connected even though there's no one word for them.
How much do you personally subscribe to inyeon?
Well, I feel like the idea of inyeon is something that is kind of like very commonplace in Korea, and I think it's also, it's not just a Korean concept, it's also Eastern philosophy concept, where most places that exist, most cultures that exist in Eastern philosophy really has a word that's a version of this. There's a word for it in India and in China, and I think, if you spend some time in Korea, you will hear the word inyeon like, at least once a day, because it is kind of a very common saying, because you can just say that about anybody who you end up in a room with. Like, I think easily Koreans, the Korean concept is like you and I, because we ended up in this room talking for 10 minutes, that would make us inyeon. And what that means is also in our many past lives together, we ran into each other, we bumped into each other, or were something meaningful to each other long enough so that it resulted in these 10 minutes where we are going to speak. And I think that really is the heart of it. And I think, I don't know if it's something that I like believe, but I think it is something that I feel like if you were to really think of every connection you have that way, everybody you encounter that way, I don't think how that could be bad for your life. I think that it is very enriching for your life, and it's a very wonderful thing for your life to really feel connected to even the smallest connection, the person you bump into in the street. You're like, I guess that was inyeon too,
So you got 3 characters at the centre of the story. I wondered how you went about choosing your 3 main actors. And I was thinking particularly of John Magaro as the husband, because that's actually perhaps the most difficult role of the lot, because it would be so easy to make him terribly noble and long-suffering, and of course he's nothing like that at all.
Of course. Well, I feel like that really is what's so difficult about casting the role of Arthur. I did find it to be probably in some ways the most difficult. And then also once he was cast, we were also working really hard to sort of calibrate what his character was going to be like, because exactly he has to be none of those things. And he also has to be this like very intelligent and emotionally intelligent and very masculine person whose idea of masculinity is going to be, of course, in this way that is internal and about intelligence. And it's about a thing where it's about setting himself aside for this moment, which I think is the most, it shows such strength. And I think that really was the thing that I found in John, but also we also worked together to craft in Arthur. And of course, and I think that when it comes to all 3 roles, the thing that I'm looking for is a bit of inyeon. And I think that it is something where you just, you meet them and then you just have a feeling, you're like, I wonder if she's Nora. I think she might be Nora. And you talk to them and then you get to know them a little bit and then you work together a little bit and then you're like, no, she is Nora. So it really is, I don't know how to describe it except for this ineffable way that you talk about when you connect, where it was an ineffable connection that made me believe that these 3 were the actors for these roles.
So you've come from a theatrical background. This is your first film both as a writer and a director, so you've taken on an awful lot. Are we going to see more films from you, or are you going back to the theatre?
I'm going to make more movies.
Yes, that was the right answer.
It's the only answer.